Hi everyone, my name is Tyler and I'm here to help you get into your new 40k army. 40k as a hobby can be very expensive to get into, but my goal with this series is to help you get a full army going without having to break the bank. Before we dive into the list, let's talk about some basic rules that we're going to be using for the list building process here. Our first goal is going to be to keep it affordable and utilize box deals. For everything that we're going to be looking at today, we're going to be looking at it from an MSRP value from Games Workshop themselves. Now, I don't recommend buying everything MSRP from Games Workshop. Often, local hobby stores, eBay, Amazon, things of that nature will have much better deals for the kits that I'm about to show you. Our second goal is that we're going to be making the list in steps, starting at 500 points and working our way up to 1,000 points, 1,500 points, and 2,000 points. Our third rule is we're going to be avoiding Forge World and Finecast. Many Forge World models are often very pricey for the points that they provide you on the table, and the resin used can be hard to work with, especially for beginners. As far as Finecast goes, I just don't think that they're quite as high quality as the plastic models that you can get otherwise. Our fourth goal is to aim to make lists with decent competitive viability. We're going to be trying to make lists that can do well at casual tournaments, in your games with friends, or maybe even get you some wins at major tournaments. Our fifth and final rule is the most important one. Just because I don't mention a model in my list, it doesn't mean that it isn't good. The most important thing that you can do is collect models that you think are cool. There's an entire side of the hobby that has nothing to do with playing, and if you don't like the models you're painting and building, you're not going to get the most out of this hobby. Today, we're going to be talking about the Chaos Space Marines. The Chaos Space Marines are a group of super soldiers who used to work under the Imperium of Man before something called the Horus Heresy, where they betrayed the Imperium of Man and fell to chaos. Chaos Space Marines make up 9 separate sub-factions, 6 of which are considered sub-factions of Chaos Space Marines themselves. These sub-factions are the Black Legion, the Emperor's Children, the Alpha Legion, Iron Warriors, Wordbearers, and Night Lords. Each faction is made up of a gene seed from a different trait or Primarch. This gene seed is used to enhance these humans into the super soldiers that they ultimately become, and infuses them with DNA from the Primarch. Chaos Space Marine is kind of a blanket term for the Space Marines that are either Chaos Worshippers, Terrorists, or just people who are regular rebels of the Imperium. Being a Chaos Space Marine does not inherently mean that you worship Chaos, it more so just means that you are an enemy of the Imperium. Because the forces of Chaos are so much smaller than the Imperium of Man itself, Chaos Space Marines will regularly team up with demons in order to bolster their numbers on the battlefield. Now let's go ahead and let's talk about some of the pros to collecting Chaos Space Marines. The Horus Heresy is kind of the premier defining event of Warhammer 40k. And because Chaos Space Marines were such an important part of that, Chaos Space Marines get to have a lot of really cool and awesome lore with plenty of variety, given how the different sub-factions all behave very differently from each other. Lots of Chaos Space Marine models also look incredible, especially if you like the spiky, edgy power armor look. There's a ton of variety in Chaos Space Marine models, thanks to their allyship with Chaos Demons as well as Chaos Knights, but also just because Chaos Space Marines have a lot of different characters and models that have varying levels of mutation and have fallen to different states of chaos. Chaos Space Marines are considered a fairly elite army, so every single model that you have on the table is going to feel a lot more powerful. It also means that you're going to wind up spending usually quite a bit less money on your models than other armies might. And I think quite possibly the biggest benefit that the Chaos Space Marines have is that they're a lot closer to being 6 separate armies in one, thanks to their different factions often playing extremely different from one another. But like any army, Chaos Space Marines also have their cons to being collected. Chaos Space Marines are kind of a second favorite child of Games Workshop, which means that you'll almost always be waiting for Space Marine models to get their updates, their new models, their new rules, their new lore, before you start to get to see anything. Despite the impressive variety in sub-factions and the level of chaos corruption varying between all these factions, Chaos models often wind up just boiling down to differently colored Black Legion models, as you will see a lack of sculpts for Night Lords, Sword Bearers, Emperor's Children, Iron Warriors, and Alpha Legion. If you only care about one of the Chaos Space Marine sub-factions, then there's a lot of lore that you probably won't bother with. If you're one of those Wordbearer fans who thinks that Erebus did nothing wrong, you aren't going to care about what the Night Lords do on the other side of the galaxy. Emperor's Children are currently expected to be getting their own faction this edition, meaning that in the near future you might have less options with Chaos Space Marines. As much as having every sub-faction play completely differently is a good thing, it's also a little bit of a bad thing when it comes to collecting. It often means that something like a mass dreadnought army is only going to work for one, maybe two sub-factions. So you might wind up needing to collect multiple copies of a lot of different models just to have that variety. And quite possibly the biggest downfall of Chaos Space Marines is having to paint Chaos Trim. The torture of having to go and painstakingly do every little bit of trim is torture so unreal that it could only have been made by Slaanesh herself. Let's take a moment to look at the rules that the Chaos Space Marines are going to be running on the tabletop. Their first rule is Lost in the Damned. If you're running Chaos Space Marines, then you can also run Khorne Berserkers from World Eaters, Rubric Marines from Thousand Suns, or Plague Marines from Death Guard. You can also include demons and other chaos-aligned units in your army. The second army rule is Dark Pacts. If your Chaos Space Marines choose, then you can have them take a Dark Pact. They will gain either lethal hits or sustained hits 1, and in addition, they will also have to pass a leadership test. If they fail that test, then they will take some mortal wounds onto themselves as a price that has been paid to the Dark Gods for this burst in power. The detachment rule for Chaos Space Marines is Marks of Chaos. It is a little bit wordy, but the basic idea is this. You get to pick between one of 4 gods or all of the gods at once if you choose Chaos Undivided, and depending on which god you choose, your unit will be better at doing a certain job. If you pick Khorne, then if you choose lethal hits, you can lethal hit in melee on a 5-up instead of a 6. If you pick Tzeentch and lethal hits, then you will get a lethal hit on a 5-up at ranged. Nurgle, sustained hits 1 on a 5-up at ranged, and Slaanesh is sustained hits 1 on a 5-up in melee. If you choose Chaos Undivided, then every single time a model makes an attack, you can reroll any hit rolls of 1. It is important to note that when you pick these marks, you are also getting an added benefit to specific stratagems. For example, if you choose the Mark of Slaanesh and then you use the stratagem Unnatural Swiftness, not only is your unit going to be eligible to fall back, and shoot, and charge all in one turn, but that unit is also eligible to advance and shoot and charge, which means that a unit that is marked with the Mark of Slaanesh will also be able to move much faster up the board and be able to make those long charges more easily. Before we dive too far into the list building, I want to talk about Boarding Patrol Chaos Space Marines. This is a box that might be a little bit difficult for you to get your hands on, but if you can, then you will want this, especially for the second list that I'm going to be showing you today. It comes with Abaddon, Chaos Cultists, and some extra Legionaries, which are going to be very, very helpful for being able to fill out your roster early. Jumping right into things, we're going to be starting off by picking up 1 Combat Patrol Chaos Space Marines and 1 box of Chaos Cultists. The reason that we need to have both the Combat Patrol and the Chaos Cultists is the Combat Patrol at the time of recording, unfortunately, has no good way of getting to 500 points. It's going to be either 530 points or it's going to be something closer to 440 points, and neither of those are quite well balanced. Because Chaos Cultists are a cheap unit that you will want in your end army anyways, we're picking it up now and kind of fronting a little bit of the cost that we'll need later. For the 500 point list, we are going to be bringing the Dark Apostle with a Mark of Slaanesh, who will be pairing up with 5 Legionaries, who will also have a Mark of Slaanesh. They will also be equipped with Las Cannon, a heavy melee weapon, and 2 chainswords. The 10 cultists are going to have the Mark of Nurgle in order to make sure that if they are potentially targeted on the backline from indirect fire or something like that, we can easily pop a stratagem to make them immune to being shot. This makes them a premier backline unit alongside their ability to generate extra command points for us throughout the game. For the Havocs, we're going to be giving them the Mark of Chaos Undivided, Power Fist, Plasma Gun, and 4 Havoc Las Cannons. You can give them almost any heavy weapon you choose. I picked the Havoc Las Cannons just because I prefer to have anti-tank options, especially for something that has some good potential melee threat. And Havoc's having the Mark of Chaos Undivided is important because it gives us access to the Profane Zeal stratagem for full rerolls to hit and wound. This makes them very good at picking up those heavier vehicles. And speaking of vehicles, the Hellbrute is going to be equipped with a Mark of Nurgle so that it can also get access to the Swarm of Flies stratagem. It's going to be equipped with a missile launcher and a twin las cannon for the exact same reason as the Havocs. Important to note is that because the Hellbrute is a vehicle, it cannot go through walls, and so giving it a longer range option to be able to support from the backfield is going to be much more valuable. Moving into the 1,000 point list, we're going to be picking up 1 Chaos Rhino, and then we're also going to be picking up 2 Warpforge boxes. These Warpforge boxes are going to have 2 Obliterators and 1 Venom Crawler each. It is important to remember that when we're picking up this Warpforge box, we're not going to be using the Venom Crawlers right away. We're going to be primarily using the Obliterators as they're a much better unit, and the Venom Crawler is going to come in later to help fill out the list for points. This box is extremely cost effective for us, especially among CSM. When we see the list in action, we can see exactly what we're talking about, with the 2 Obliterators being broken up into separate units. The first unit is going to be run with the Mark of Nurgle, so they can benefit from Dark Obscuration, while the second unit of Obliterators is going to go into Deep Strike with the Mark of Chaos Undivided, being able to get access to the powerful Profane Zeal stratagem for full rerolls to hit and wound. We're also able to bring in the second 5-man unit of Legionaries with the exact same loadout. It's important to note that it is a second 5-man and not changing the Legionaries to a 10-man, because when the Dark Apostle, which is a 3-model unit, joins up with 10 Legionaries, their squad size is 13. The Chaos Rhino has a maximum transport capacity of 12, so if we want the Legionaries and the Dark Apostle to be able to move up the board with the Chaos Rhino, we unfortunately have to leave the second unit of Legionaries on their own. Moving on to the 1,500 point list, we're going to be picking up 1 Master of Possession, we're going to be picking up 1 Chaos Lord, and we're going to be picking up 2 boxes of Chosen. The Chaos Lord is going to be given a Mark of Chaos Undivided, Demon Hammer, and a Plasma Pistol. He will likely be pairing up with the Chosen, but there's a chance that he will pair up with the Legionaries instead. The Master of Possession will be given a Mark of Slaanesh, so that he can get access to the Advance and Charge stratagem from Slaanesh, but he very well might also get paired with the Chosen or the Legionaries. It just depends on what you are thinking that you're going to need for your battle plan, whether you want to have access to the extra Advance and Charge distance, or you want access to the free stratagem. Building a list with the loadout for Chosen is a little bit complicated, but the bare basics that you will need is going to be 2 Power Fists, 2 paired Accursed Weapons, 2 Combi Weapons, 4 Bolt Guns, 4 Plasma Pistols, and 6 Bolt Pistols. The Chosen are going to be the premier damage unit in your army, and they will be going inside of the Chaos Rhino instead of the Legionaries. Speaking of the Legionaries, they will still be run as 2 5-man so that 1 can go with the Dark Apostle and 1 can go with the Master of Possession. Finally, we're going to be bringing in 1 of the 2 Venom Crawlers that we got from the earlier Warpforge box and giving it the Mark of Nurgle. At 2,000 points, we have a very simple pickup. We're going to be grabbing 1 box of Accursed Cultists and 1 more Warpforge box. The reason that we only need to pick up these 2 boxes is because of all of the extra Venom Crawlers that we had from earlier, being able to finally be brought into the list in their entirety. This will end up rounding this list out at a nice $733 MSRP from Games Workshop. Looking at how this changes our 2,000 point list, we will have 1 unit of 8 Accursed Cultists, 5 of whom are mutants and 3 of whom are torments. We're going to have a second unit of Obliterators in Deep Strike with Mark of Chaos Undivided so that they can come in, potentially on a 3rd turn, separate from the first group of Obliterators to be able to get more power, or bring them both in at the same time if we really desperately need it. And we're going to be bringing in the last 2 remaining Venom Crawlers and giving both a Mark of Nurgle. One thing to note about this list is that Venom Crawlers are not the best units right now. They will likely be the first thing that you cut as you begin to go past 2,000 points. But depending on how long it takes you to get your models built and get this army constructed, Venom Crawlers might be great, so it's still good to have them in the back just in case. Now, the second version of this list is going to be one that's focusing primarily on a Terminator Death Star that's going to also be utilizing Abaddon. In order to get there, we're going to have to build up slowly though. We're going to be starting off with 1 box of Chaos Terminators, 2 boxes of Raptors, and 1 Chaos Rhino. The Chaos Terminators are going to be equipped with a Mark of Tzeentch, 3 Power Fists, 1 Chain Fist, and a Cursed Weapon, 4 Combi Bolters, and 1 Reaper Autocannon. We're giving them the Mark of Tzeentch specifically so that we can get access to the Skin Shift stratagem, which will be able to bring our Chaos Terminators back from either the brink of death or death itself. The Warp Talons will all be equipped with a Mark of Slaanesh in order to be able to get access to Advance and Charge. And the Chaos Rhino will continue to be equipped with a Mark of Nurgle so that we can try to protect it from getting shot off the board too soon. The Chaos Rhino is still going to be holding 1 unit of Legionaries with the Dark Apostle. The Warp Talons are fast enough to get up the board on their own, and the Chaos Terminators are able to come in from Deep Strike. As we move into 1500 points, we're going to be picking up a second box of Chaos Terminators, a box of Nurglings from Age of Sigmar, and we're going to be picking up 1 Warpforge box. Important to note that even though the Nurglings are from Age of Sigmar, most Chaos Demon models are, and thanks to us being a Chaos army, we're able to kind of splash in some models from that game that will still have rules in 40k. As we're doubling up on the number of Chaos Terminators that we have, we're also going to be doubling up on their equipment, going up to 6 Power Fists, 2 Chain Fists, 2 Accursed Weapons, 8 Combi Bolters, and 2 Reaper Autocannons. The Venom Crawler is still going to be equipped with a Mark of Nurgle, nothing new there. The 2 Obliterators are still going to be equipped with the Mark of Chaos Undivided. Same exact reason as before. We want them to be able to come down and really make use of powerful zeal. And the Nurglings are specifically in here as this army can sometimes struggle to be able to score objectives and secondaries for cheap. Nurglings are a 35-point deep striking unit that are going to be able to do exactly that job for us, allowing us to put more power into this one giant Terminator brick. As we move into 2,000 points, there's only 2 more boxes that we need to pick up. We're going to pick up 1 Abaddon the Despoiler and 1 Forge Fiend. Thankfully, because Abaddon is such an expensive model on the table, this means that we are all done. Now, because Abaddon the Despoiler comes with every single mark equipped, and he will be going into our Chaos Terminator unit, the Chaos Terminators will now have access to every single Chaos stratagem at its maximum efficiency. They'll also be able to pick any single Dark Pact that they want in order to really maximize that power. Additionally, Abaddon is going to be able to supply us with a variety of buffs depending on the situation. The Forge Fiend is going to be specifically equipped with 3 copies of its Ectoplasma Cannons and its Battle Limbs. The Ectoplasma Cannons is just the best outward offensive profile that we can possibly put on this thing, and the Mark of Nurgle will allow us to keep it out in the open and potentially keep it safe if we need to. Now, one thing that I do need to bring up is the competitive viability of Chaos Space Marines. At the time of recording, Chaos Space Marines are very good, which means they will likely be getting a nerf sometime soon. The current Chaos Space Marines list that I was able to put together using top tournament lists frequently came out to around $900 to $950 thanks to how much they were spamming a particular unit, the Chosen. Because I expect the Chosen to get nerfed, I didn't want to include too many copies of them in these lists. On the bright side, if things get nerfed, then it makes it much easier to very quickly get to a 2,000 point army, since now every model is worth a few more points. It might change this list in the very near future, but when those changes happen, I'll come back around and I'll make any adjustments that are needed. When we look at the tiering for this list, because we have both of the lists presented at under that $750 range, they're going to slot very nicely into this second tier, right below Grey Knights and above Orcs and Tau. I hope that you enjoyed this list, and I hope that the variety of the 2 styles gives you something to work with. That's all I have for you today, and I hope to see you on the next one.